Hi, my name is Clara. But before I share what happened to me, I want to ask you something. Have you ever been humiliated by your own family? Maybe at a holiday dinner? Has anyone ever made you feel small just because you refused to give them something they felt entitled to? Have you ever felt like money mattered more than love in your own home? If any of this sounds familiar, tell me in the comments. And let me know where you're watching from. I really want to hear how families deal with this in different parts of the world. I'm 52 now. Never married. No kids. I've always been the kind of person who stays in the background, does what's asked and never makes a scene. I've never been one to raise my voice, not even when I probably should have. In our family I was always the helper. The one who shows up early to set the table, who stays late to wash the dishes, who sends money when someone needs it but never asks for it back. That's just how I've always been. About 6 months ago my grandmother passed away. She was the only one in the family who ever truly understood me. She used to tell me, "Clara, don't let them walk all over you just because you're kind." I never really listened to her until recently. After she passed, her lawyer reached out to me. Turns out she had left me $550,000. It wasn't expected and I certainly didn't ask for it. She'd been saving for years and she told the lawyer that I was the only one who never treated her like a burden. I didn't tell anyone at first. I just wanted to breathe and think. But nothing prepared me for what happened on Christmas Day in front of nearly 100 people. When I got the invitation it seemed normal. My brother Thomas sent a group message to all of us saying, "Christmas dinner will be at the restaurant this year. Make sure you're there, we're doing something special." It wasn't odd for our family to host Christmas at the restaurant. It's been the heart of our family for decades. I practically grew up there. As a teenager I used to help my father clean the booths and refill salt shakers. When I got older I ran the register and did weekend shifts in the kitchen, flipping pancakes and wiping tables. That little corner restaurant was our pride. Wood-paneled walls, checkered tablecloths, old jukebox in the corner still playing Elvis and Johnny Cash. People from the neighborhood knew it by name. That place held memories. Birthdays, anniversaries, late-night talks with my mom over pie and coffee. So even though something in my gut felt off, I still went. I arrived just before 6. The parking lot was already full and I had to park down the street. That's when I noticed it. There were too many cars. Not just family. I saw neighbors, church folks, even some old friends I hadn't seen in years. It was more than just a dinner. It felt like an event. The minute I stepped inside I noticed it. The warmth, the lights, the music, it was all there, but the energy felt fake. Too sweet. My cousin Sarah rushed over to take my coat like I was royalty. "Clara, you look amazing. Come in, come in." I blinked. Sarah hadn't said 2 full sentences to me in the last 3 family gatherings. Everyone was smiling too hard, laughing too loud. My niece hugged me and said, "You're the guest of honor tonight." I laughed nervously and asked why, but she just winked and said, "You'll see." They sat me at the center table. Not the kids' table. Not the outer edge like usual. Right smack in the middle under the chandelier. It was too much attention. Everyone kept glancing over at me like they were waiting for something. Then I noticed Thomas, my brother. He stood near the kitchen smiling at me like a car salesman. He'd always been the charming one, the talker. But that night his smile felt stretched. Like he was hiding something. As I sat there I looked around the room, faces I'd known my whole life. But none of them felt familiar in that moment. My heart started to beat a little faster. Conversations were quiet, but people were whispering, sneaking glances in my direction. I could feel it. Something wasn't right. I tried to stay calm. I sipped my drink and watched the candles flicker on the tables. The waiters, all hired for the night, moved around like clockwork. Appetizers came out on fancy trays. Christmas music played softly in the background. It was beautiful. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched like a target. Thomas finally made his way to my table. He leaned in and said, "We're just waiting for Dad to finish up in the back. Then we'll get started." I nodded and gave him a small smile, but inside I felt like something was coming. He patted my shoulder a little too hard and said, "I'm really glad you came, Clara." I didn't know it then, but that would be the last time I walked into that restaurant feeling like it still belonged to all of us. Dinner had just finished. The plates were cleared, dessert was on the way, and the wine was flowing like water. People laughed too loudly, especially around my table. My cheeks hurt from smiling, and I was starting to count the minutes until I could politely excuse myself and drive home. Then my father stood up. He tapped a spoon against his glass, the sound sharp and sudden. Everyone fell quiet. He raised his glass like he was about to make a toast. I smiled, thinking maybe he wanted to say something about Christmas or maybe remember Grandma. She used to be the heart of these dinners. But his tone, it wasn't warm. I want to thank everyone for being here tonight, he began. This family has been through a lot this year. Loss, change, but also blessings. I felt my stomach turn. He looked straight at me. Some of us have been very blessed. The room shifted. Chairs squeaked. People sat up straighter. My father took a deep breath and said, "As many of you know, Clara received a generous inheritance from her grandmother, God rest her soul. Over $500,000. I blinked. My heart dropped. She's been quiet about it, he continued. But this family restaurant, our legacy, is struggling. And we believe it's only right that Clara steps up. She has the means now. And the family expects her to support the restaurant." Then came the sound that I still hear in my dreams. Cheering. Clapping. Real applause. Some people actually cheered. I looked around in disbelief. My uncle raised his glass. My cousin mouthed, "Finally." Even my sister clapped slowly like it was a coronation. I felt the blood drain from my face. I stood up, hands shaking. "I wasn't told about any of this," I said. My voice was calm, too calm. "This is my inheritance. Grandma left it to me for a reason." The room went quiet. Then Thomas stood up. "You're really going to say no? After everything this family's done for you? What has this family done for me?" I asked. "Other than expect me to stay quiet and give without question?" Gasps. Thomas's face turned red. "You wouldn't have anything if it weren't for this family. That restaurant made you who you are." "No," I said quietly. "Grandma did." Then chaos. My uncle, red-faced and shaking, threw a glass of wine across the room. It shattered against the wall behind me. My cousin stood up and yelled, "You're selfish." My mother covered her mouth but didn't say a word. And then, my aunt. She stood up. Slow. Her heels clicked against the floor as she walked toward me. "You think you're better than us now?" she hissed. I didn't answer. I didn't move. She picked up a full bottle of red wine from the table beside her. I watched her frozen. She raised it. And she shattered it against the side of my head. The sound was sharp. Glass and wine splashed everywhere. I stumbled back, gasping. Pain exploded down my face and neck. I touched my head, my hand came back red. For a moment no one moved. Then people started filming. Yes. Filming. Phones came out. My niece was crying. My brother just stood there, mouth open. My own mother turned her face away. Not a single hand reached out to help me. I looked at the floor, shards of glass and red wine that looked too much like blood. I could barely hear anything through the ringing in my ears. That was the moment I realized, I wasn't family. I was an ATM they couldn't control. And now that I had said no, I was nothing. I don't even remember leaving the restaurant. My vision was blurry. My head was pounding. One side of my face felt hot and sticky, and my hair clung to my cheek, soaked in wine and blood. No one walked me out. No one asked if I was okay. I drove myself to the emergency room, hands trembling, barely able to keep the wheel steady. At the they asked what happened. I told them I slipped. That it was an accident. A clumsy moment at a holiday party. They stitched me up without questioning much. 7 stitches right above my ear. The nurse who cleaned the blood from my face was kind. She patted my shoulder gently and asked if someone was coming to pick me up. I told her no. She looked at me like she knew there was more I wasn't saying. But she didn't press. When I got home I collapsed into bed, still wearing my stained dress. I didn't cry right away. My body was too numb. But around 3 in the morning I broke down. I sobbed into my pillow like a child. Not because of the pain, but because they had humiliated me. The people I had spent my life trying to please had broken a bottle over my head, because I wouldn't give them money. I spent the next day in silence. No one called. No apologies. No, "Are you okay?" Not even a text from my mother. I kept replaying the moment over and over in my head. My father's speech, the clapping, the laughter, the sound of glass hitting my skull. The way no one tried to stop it. The way no one cared. Then, like a whisper from somewhere deep inside me, I remembered something. My grandmother's will. Months ago, when her estate was being sorted out, The lawyer had explained that while most of the restaurant operations were passed to my father and brother, the building itself, the physical property, was still partly mine. 33%. A quiet little slice that Grandma made sure stayed in my name. She had whispered it to me once before she passed during one of our afternoon walks. Just in case, she said. I didn't understand what she meant back then. But no. I did. I pulled out the documents from my drawer, neatly filed just as I had kept everything since the day she died. I flipped through the pages with shaking hands, eyes scanning for confirmation. And there was. I owned the building. 1/3 of it. I stared at that paper for a long time. My hands stopped shaking. The next morning I didn't cry. I didn't hide. I got dressed, brushed my hair carefully around the stitches and called my lawyer. He picked up after 2 rings. Clara. I took a deep breath and said, I'm ready to press charges. And I want to talk about selling my share of the building. There was silence on the line. Then he said, You sure? Yes, I whispered. I'm done being quiet. The next few days were a blur of phone calls, legal documents, and long talks with my lawyer, Mr. Ben Carter, a man I'd only spoken to once before when I inherited my grandmother's share of the property. This time I showed up in his office with a fresh bandage on my head and a folder full of everything I had on the restaurant. He looked at me, concern in his eyes. Clara, are you okay? I nodded, calm but firm. I'm not here for sympathy. I want to make a move. And I want to do it legally, cleanly, and without warning my family. We started with the obvious, the assault. The entire scene had been captured on multiple phones. Clips were already circulating in group chats, and one even landed on a Facebook group before someone took it down. That worked in our favor. Mr. Carter said we could press charges and possibly seek damages, but I told him to hold off on that part. Not yet. First, I said, I want to know everything about the restaurant's current financial health. So he dug. Within 2 days we found out the restaurant, this shiny, beloved family jewel, was actually in bad shape. They were behind on property taxes. Business loans were stacking up. They had taken out a second mortgage against the building just to stay afloat after COVID. I was shocked at how fragile the whole operation was. From the outside it still looked like a booming family business. But inside it was hollow. That's when the idea started to form in my head. If I could get just a bit more control, I could make a move that would change everything. I remembered my cousin Kayla, one of the few in the family who had never treated me badly. She had always been quiet like me. She worked as a nurse now and rarely came to family events. I called her. Hey Clara, she said softly, surprised to hear from me. I need to ask something. Do you still have your 7% stake in the restaurant property? There was a pause. Yeah. I do. Why? I want to buy it from you, I said. Full market value. No negotiation. I just want a clean deal. Kayla hesitated, then admitted she could use the money. Her husband had lost his job and bills were piling up. We met 2 days later. She signed the paperwork. I wired the money the same day. Now I owned 40%. It still wasn't a controlling share, but it gave me something much more valuable. Leverage. I didn't stop there. My lawyer reached out to a local commercial property analyst who had a contact at one of the biggest restaurant chains in the city, Harvest Lane, a growing name known for its fresh, modern twist on traditional cooking. Turns out they'd had their eye on our family's location for years. Prime real estate. Big parking lot. Right off the main highway. They had approached my father before, but he turned them down flat. Family legacy, he always said. We don't sell out. But now the situation was different. I scheduled a meeting with their regional director. We sat across from each other in a quiet office on a Thursday afternoon. I showed them my ownership documents and I explained, carefully, professionally, that I was interested in selling. They were interested. Very interested. Especially once they saw the debt numbers. The regional director leaned forward and said, If you can secure a controlling interest, we'll make an offer that'll make it worth your time. I didn't smile. Not yet. Instead I nodded, stood up and shook her hand. As I walked out of that office building I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Power. For the first time I wasn't waiting to be loved. I wasn't hoping for approval. I wasn't the quiet one in the corner who just wanted to be included. I was the woman with the plan. And no one in my family knew a thing. Not yet. 3 weeks passed. Long, quiet days filled with legal filings, property transfers, and silent, cold mornings where I sipped my coffee alone and stared out the window thinking of that night. Thinking of the blood on the floor. The laughter. The silence when I cried. But now, it was time. New Year's Eve. I waited until the perfect moment. I knew the restaurant would be busy. My family always threw a huge New Year's dinner event. It was their most profitable night of the year. People came dressed in sparkles and fur, champagne flowed, the band played loud, and they acted like royalty. Like they owned the whole street. This time they didn't. I pulled into the parking lot around 5:30 p.m. My lawyer was beside me in the passenger seat. 2 legal officials followed behind us in a separate car. They had the signed documents, the judge's ruling, and the full sale contract. Every paper was perfectly stamped, sealed, and backed by the new owners, Harvest Lane. But the restaurant didn't know yet. I remember looking at the glowing Andrews Family Kitchen sign above the entrance, hearing the clinking of glasses from inside. The music. The laughter. And then I pushed open the door. Heads turned. My brother looked up from the bar, confused. My uncle paused mid-conversation. My mother stood by the buffet table arranging silver trays. I saw her shoulders tense when she spotted me. Then silence. It rolled over the room like a thick blanket. Just like on Christmas Day, I was once again in the center of the spotlight. Only this time, it was on my terms. I walked forward with steady steps. My heels clicked against the tile. I didn't stop until I reached the center of the dining room where everyone could see me. My lawyer and the officials stood right behind me. I took out a single folded document from my bag, held it up, and said one sentence. You have 45 minutes to vacate the building. It belongs to me now. The room exploded. What? My cousin screamed from the back. You're bluffing, my brother shouted, jumping from his bar stool. My uncle knocked over a wine glass. A server dropped a tray in shock. Then came my father. He rose from his usual chair, the one he always sat in like a king. His face was pale. He looked around at the people staring at him, waiting for him to say something. To fight. To act like the big man again. But instead he collapsed back into the chair, chest heaving. Call 911, someone yelled. But he waved them off. He wasn't having a heart attack. He was having something worse. A reality check. My mother rushed over. Clara, she whispered, voice trembling. Please, don't do this. Not tonight. I turned to her. For a second I remembered being a little girl holding her hand in that same restaurant, asking if I could help set the tables. But that memory was from another lifetime. You stood there while I bled, I said softly. Now you can watch this place bleed without you. But it's our legacy, your grandmother would never. I cut her off. Grandma made sure I had a piece of this place. She gave me the chance to protect myself. And I'm doing exactly that. My brother pushed forward. You think you can waltz in here with a couple papers and take what we built? You didn't build this, I replied calmly. You ran it into the ground. You used me. You attacked me. And you thought I'd just disappear. He cursed under his breath and lunged toward me. One of the legal officials stepped forward quickly and blocked him. Sir, you need to back away. This is now private property under a new owner's authority. Interfering will result in arrest. He froze. His fists clenched, but he stepped back. I turned to the staff. Most of them looked confused. Some embarrassed. A few, ones who'd worked with me when I was young, looked almost relieved. I addressed them directly. You'll all receive severance, and the new owners are offering interviews if you're interested in staying on. But this restaurant? It's officially closed under this name. I walked to the office. My grandmother's old desk. I placed the official notice of transfer right in the center. As I turned to leave, I saw a photo still sitting on the wall. Me at 15 holding a tray and smiling. My dad had taken it. It had hung there for years. I took it down. I walked out of that restaurant without looking back. 45 minutes later, the doors were locked. And by midnight, while the world was celebrating a new year, my family sat in the cold, dark parking lot, trying to understand what had just happened. I went home, poured myself a glass of wine and raised it in the air. To family, I whispered, and the day I stopped being their doormat. The moment the doors closed behind my family, I stood outside watching them leave. Their faces were pale, their shoulders heavy with shock and disbelief. They looked broken and speechless, like the air had been knocked out of them. I didn't feel joy or victory. I felt something quieter, something deeper. A calm I hadn't known for years. For the first time I wasn't scared. I wasn't anxious about what they might say or do next. They had lost their grip on me and I was free. 2 months later, the restaurant reopened with a new name and new owners. Harvest Lane. The familiar Andrews Family Kitchen sign was gone, replaced by something fresh, something hopeful. I didn't attend the reopening. That chapter was closed. I never spoke to my family again. Not because I wanted to punish them, but because I realized some wounds run too deep to heal with words. They chose their path and I chose mine. Still, sometimes I visit the building. I sit quietly in the corner booth or outside on the bench just to remember that night. My night. The night I stopped begging to be loved by people who only wanted what I had. It wasn't the money that set me free. It was the moment I stopped hoping for love from those who never really cared. The moment I realized my worth wasn't tied to their approval or greed. That realization, more than any inheritance, was my true inheritance. And that's the story I wanted to share with you today. If you've ever felt used, betrayed, or unappreciated by your own family, please tell me in the comments. I want to hear your stories. Where are you watching from? How did you find the strength to stand up for yourself? Thank you for listening. Remember, your worth isn't measured by what others take from you, but by what you refuse to give away. Take care of yourself.